Right, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Comic Book Radio. I am your host, Peter Cimetti. We had a 2-week hiatus as I've been trying my best to finish up fulfillment on King Cryptid. It is a beast of a campaign, so thank you guys for being patient with me, but I'm very, very close to being done. Under 200 or so packages left to ship out of the around 1,300 packages, so we're getting there. Probably about another 2 weeks tops. So tonight we have a fun show for you guys, not like the previous ones aren't. And if they weren't, don't tell me. But tonight's guest is David LUCARELLI of Tinseltown. And we're going to be talking about heroism in storytelling. So on most comic book radio shows, what I do is open the floor to you guys, and it's an invite that you can just pop in and talk. But tonight we're just going to have me and David talk about this. But you guys are more than welcome to, instead of joining us on air, of course, you can join us in the chat. And whatever it is that you'd like to talk about and discuss in there in terms of your comments on tonight's topic, please feel free to share your opinions, and we'll absolutely be discussing them with you. We also have David's Kickstarter for his Tinseltown Losing the Light campaign. The description has the link for that, as well as for King Cryptid. That is currently live and active, and he'll talk about that for a little bit, but we're mostly going to be spending time talking about the topic at hand here. All right, so let me see here. We're going to be, here it is. We've got Keith in Comics says, I know that man in the thumbnail, and his name is not David LUCARELLI. That man in the thumbnail is Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell. So yes, it would not be David LUCARELLI, and Joseph Campbell is not a guest on tonight's show, as that great man has been dead for almost 35 years. Jaded One says, good evening, everyone. And the reason it's Joseph Campbell is because of the hero's journey, of course. Logan Effling, what's up? I hope you're doing well. Seer of all that is obvious, hope you're doing good too. Eric DeGuapo is here. So is Dr. Mask's Retro Elixir. All right. So without further ado, let's bring on David LUCARELLI. David.
Hey, Pete. How's it going, man?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you. Today is actually my 15th wedding anniversary. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Years. You want to go? I don't want to get you in trouble.
No. Actually, it's funny. My wife and I were just joking because she's like, you have one live stream on our 15th anniversary. And I said, yeah, but I have 2 on Mother's Day. So, you know.
Oh, my Lord. All right. Well, we're just going to go for an hour tonight. So hopefully give her my thanks for being so kind enough to let us have you for an hour. So I know you said that this topic is near and dear to you. Before we get into it, you had mentioned in the private chat there was some audio issues. Are those still
I resolved
for you?
I figured it out. I'm good.
Okay, great. All right. So, Eric says congrats to the 15 years, and so does Dr. Mask.
Appreciate that, guys.
Yeah, and congrats indeed. Let's hope you live to see a 16th with your wife for losing an hour tonight.
Yeah, no, she's very understanding and supportive.
Oh, fantastic.
And, yeah, I got no complaints.
That's wonderful. Okay, great. All right, so let's make the most of our time. So you did say that this was a near and dear topic to you, heroism and storytelling. Why is that?
Probably because my dad had a PhD in medieval literature with an emphasis on the Arthurian tales. So he raised me with the love of the whole idea of heroic adventure. He read to me the Chronicles of Narnia and the Lord of the Rings when I was a little kid. And that was a thing that we shared and we bonded over, seeing the Flash Gordon serials, going to see the first Star Wars film. So yeah, to me, I get kind of evangelical about it, It's funny that you put up the picture of Joseph Campbell because, great minds think alike. I pulled this out because I knew we were going to be talking about heroism and storytelling. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with this book, I would say if you're going to write comics, particularly adventure comics or comics with superheroes or heroes of any type, this book is the number one book you should have in your collection. I mean, obviously there's other how-to books about the nuts and bolts and mechanics of making comics, but just in terms of being useful as a guide for pure storytelling, The Power of Myth is great because it's interviews with Bill Moyer where Joseph Campbell's just talking off the top of his head. So it's very easy to digest. And, once you get past that, you can get into more academic stuff like Hero of a Thousand Faces. And yeah, Lord of the Rings is great. But that's a great place to start if you want to learn, what Joseph Campbell has to say about things like the mono myth, the myth of the hero.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. Yeah, there's so much research that he did into that in terms of all the myths of many different cultures. And it really... It's interesting to see how that still pervades into all the little stories that we have nowadays. Although I think, honestly, if I really have to be brutal about it, which is also why, even though we're talking about heroism and storytelling tonight, that thumbnail also mentions where have all the heroes gone?
Right.
And we don't really see a whole lot of heroism nowadays. And when we do, it's almost treated, and I mean, feel free, of course, to counter anything I'm saying tonight. It's more interesting anyway if that happens. But it's almost treated as if heroism is cheesy and corny, and it's an aw shucks kind of bygone era to be a hero. And it really, I think we see a lot of stuff like that nowadays, where heroism is treated like you're a sucker if you're a hero, and I find that so. It's not only just wrong, it's disheartening. It's removing what true heroism is like, because of course in everyday life there's heroes all the time. They don't have to have superpowers or whatever. And these kinds of stories, you can probably feel the same way that I feel about them, where they're inspiring, and they give you something to aspire to and give you strength in moments of difficulty in your life, and to not see that kind of thing, because it's easy to sit there and go, oh well, those are great myths and these were stories of they gathered around the town or the fire or whatever it was. But this is the modern day version of that, when it's somebody that's either turning on the TV, or you go to see a movie, or you read a book, or whatever it may be, and if everything that you're encountering has this tinge of cynicism to it, that to be a hero is more like to be a fool. It's a bit daunting, and I don't see a hell of a lot of heroism nowadays. Can you say the same, or how do you feel about that?
I think a large part of modern storytelling, I like Breaking Bad comes to mind, which is a great series. I love it, but it's sort of pushing the envelope of how badly can a protagonist behave and still be somebody that the audience identifies with on any level. With, like, spoiler alert, can he allow innocent people to die? Can he hurt innocent people? Ultimately,
it's really pushing the boundaries of redemption.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately he does redeem himself, and so in much the same way that Darth Vader ultimately kind of redeems himself at the end. Now, would I say that either of those characters are true heroes? That's something else entirely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing is it's interesting to have character arcs, of course, and every single great character is going to have their own version of an arc, and for every great hero, you need a great villain. So I find that because of the fact that we don't have as many great heroes running around in stories as we used to, it's also now becoming, we don't really have too many great villains. Everything's kind of like, for the most part, and when I say everything and I use broad generalizations, I'm aware that there are still nuggets of great things out there. So I don't want everybody to think, well, Pete, there are still some things. Absolutely. But it seems like we had an abundance of a lot of that for decades, if you go back further. We're talking about Lord of the Rings, we're talking about ancient myths, you can say thousands of years of storytelling. But it seems like a lot of modern stuff has surrendered itself so much to postmodernism and nihilistic ways of thinking that it has brought the hero and the villain to almost the same level, where even though a compelling villain doesn't see themselves as the villain, we're having heroes that almost behave in ways where it's really difficult to find the heroism within what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this today because I knew we were going to be talking about it. I think you can analyze certain properties as to why they don't work or don't work very well, and it's because, say, Ang Lee's Hulk, the first Hulk, right? Through the vast majority of that movie, they're trying to kill him. He's trying to survive. I mean, anybody that is in that position would be doing the same thing, but he's not really trying to save anybody else. There's not necessarily anything heroic about what the character is doing, aside from, the instinct to survive. And so I think that's one of the reasons why that movie doesn't work as well as it should.
Yeah, I agree. It creates kind of a lack of something compelling, a lack of a character you really want to root for. At least that's how I felt, and it seems like that's how you kind of felt with the character too. And Dr. Mask put a great comment here about everything is gray now. There's so much of a gray area with everything. Sympathy for the villain, and then meanwhile, you point and laugh at the hero. And it's one thing to give, and you should give flaws to your heroes. It makes them, don't make them perfect, invincible, etc. I mean, that's not part of what I think constitutes a great hero anyway. Actually, let's talk about that. I think what constitutes an interesting and compelling hero is I look at underdog stories. Mm-hmm. I love, and not the character necessarily underdog, but underdog stories where it's the tale of the every person, in terms of this is someone who's down on their luck. This is someone who's up against tough, difficult odds, but they want to accomplish something with their life. They want to make their life mean something. They want to make their life not mean just something to themselves, but to other people as well. And I find that resonates also with a lot of people too, because we all, in a way, try to do that. We all try to leave our mark on the world. We all try to, in our own way, shape, or form, try to make the world a better place in some way than when we came into it. Mm-hmm. But I think, when it comes to great heroes, they all have that thread of there's that moment of sacrifice.
Yes. Where
they go, do I choose selfish wish fulfillment, or do I do something that I know might not necessarily even hurt me right now, but it's not going to necessarily help me achieve maybe some kind of happiness right now, but it's at the benefit of people I care about or a greater goal that I have. Right. And I think there's a lot of heroism to be said, and that's why I think we can find so much of that within stories. Of course, the odds are always bigger, the stakes are always larger, the obstacles are always more impossible and epic. But we still manage to draw something from that. And even if it's something very small in life, you can get strength and aspire to achieve something that you didn't think you could. So that's what I think constitutes a great hero. Is that similar to what you feel, or do you feel differently?
No, and I think that's why Han Solo is ultimately a hero at the end of the first Star Wars, right? Because up until that point, he's really just a mercenary. He's been paid a lot of money to, pilot the Millennium Falcon and do some stuff.
Yeah,
and he's
a lot of
trying to
character growth
survive.
for Han.
Yeah, I mean, but the moment when he decides to come back at the last second and shoot Darth Vader's ship, he's decided that other people and a greater cause are more important than him simply saving his own skin. That's what makes him heroic. And, if you look at the Road Warrior series, I mean, the first Mad Max is a great exploitation movie because, you're manipulated into justifying all of the horrific stuff that Mad Max as a character does to the bad guys because they've hurt and killed his family, and he's now this avenging angel of death. But he's not really a true hero until the Road Warrior, when he realizes that there are good people that, if they don't have his help, are not going to survive, and that he needs to put his life on the line to ensure that they at least have a chance of surviving.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because you bring up that there's a revenge motive that could make a person seem like they're heroic, but mostly what they're just doing is kind of fulfilling some sense of justice within what has happened to them, as opposed to acts of heroism. But then, like you said, with that second one, it turns into, all right, he's giving of himself. He's helping others that are in a tough situation. It's not just about getting back, getting even, whatever it may be, hurting someone because someone hurt him, that kind of a thing. And even though you root for him because of the fact of how the situation plays out, and I don't think there's too many people put in his situation that would not necessarily maybe do what he did, or feel sympathy at least towards someone doing bringing that kind of comeuppance to the people that have wronged him. But it's still that line of heroism isn't necessarily there, but it is still compelling. Eric de Guapo says something interesting. He goes, I think people have a problem making compelling heroes now because the fabric of what is considered right and moral has changed. The shared beliefs we once had has been eroded. And I think that he's correct in some way, and I also think it's something where it's not necessarily even to the extent that it's been eroded as much as it's been manipulated and twisted. So I think still, even people out there, they know what a hero is. They know what a hero looks like. They, to kind of paraphrase that speech Aunt May gives Peter Parker in those Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, they line up for a hero. They root for him. It gives them hope. People still largely know what that looks like. The thing is that nowadays what happens is that, and I'll get a little bit more what Blue Teddy narrations whenever she's in here likes to say tinfoil hat Pete is her favorite Pete. I'll get a little bit more tinfoily, is that we have the mass media, which is kind of more unilateral than anything in terms of the messaging. So they're going to control and manipulate the situation in certain narratives to who's right, who's wrong, what's heroic, what's not, what should be played upon, what shouldn't. So it can kind of twist manipulation with certain things that occur. But I still think people, though, nowadays, I don't think the majority of people are tuned into social media. I don't think the majority of people are tuned into the nonsense of the world. I think that is a big push that also a lot of the media wants to portray out there, is that like everyone's plugged in and everyone's all, just kind of gaslit to whatever it is we're talking about all the time. I still think that the large majority of people do understand and realize what a hero is and have unbelievable capacity for goodness and heroism. And then I think that's why these stories are still so compelling to people. And I think that once there's a story that does come along, or a story that has existed, and they turn to it still, because even if we don't have things now being made, we still have all that other stuff that's been made for Lord knows how long, to turn to. So if someone's new to books and heroes and stories, maybe there's not as much new stuff for them to turn to, but there's a hell of a lot of older stuff that they haven't experienced yet that's completely new to them. And they can dive into all of that. It's just people have to light the way and show them, the good stuff that exists or has existed.
Well, I think there's all kinds of heroism too. There's the quiet heroism of the father or the mother that, works 2 jobs and gets
Absolutely.
up and they're dead tired and does whatever is necessary to put clothes on their children's back and food in their bellies and a roof over their head. And, that's not going to make the 11 o'clock news that person persevered another day and, earned another dollar. But I love, I don't know if you've seen this meme, but it's great, where it's something along the lines of why you should name your child Gotham, and it's this mother and father in bed in the middle of the night, and the baby starts crying, and the wife turns to the guy and says, "Gotham needs you." And I think that resonates, because I think, we're comic book people. We know Joseph Campbell. I at least, I don't want to speak for you, but I like to think of myself as the hero in my own life. I like being a good and responsible father, and being able to look at myself in the mirror and saying, hey, you're doing a pretty good job there, kid. So, I think that the purity of heroes comes and goes in waves. I mean, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. I mean, I wouldn't deny us The Dark Knight Returns as a great book, or Watchmen as a great book, but at the same time, I wouldn't want every book to be The Dark Knight Returns, or every book to be Watchmen.
Yeah, and I found that's kind of a problem in comics. And I don't know if maybe it's a problem also just in entertainment in general, when something like that occurs, where you have a hit on your hands that all of a sudden feels like there's a paradigm shift. And then there isn't really a paradigm shift on the ground level. It's just people going like, oh, that was a different story. Cool. And doesn't mean you have to abandon all the other ones, but for some reason there feels a lot of the time like there's a forced paradigm shift. Where now it's the age of the anti-hero. Now it's the age of the dark hero, the hero that's reluctant and hates being a hero, and then you don't know if they're gonna save you or punch you in the face or do what, depending on the mood they're in, kind of hero. And it felt like, at least we'll talk about just in comics, so we don't have to expand upon into every facet of the world, but it felt like when they did that with comics, I thought, what a miss, because they had this great opportunity to possibly cater to a slightly more mature audience, or an audience at least that liked more mature kind of content. But doesn't mean that, I love mature content, but I also love all ages content, and there's tons of people out there that feel the same way. It doesn't mean you just like one over the other. I love heavy metal, but I love Dean Martin. I love classical music, but I love, synth pop from the 80s. So it doesn't mean you're just like this one person. But for some reason, a lot of these companies felt the need that instead of going, hey, we have now another avenue, we can create this thing that's a longer format story, and when we bind it together and we call it a graphic novel, even though that at the time probably sounded like, oh, a graphic novel.
Very pretentious, yeah.
Yeah, or something else. There's some people nowadays that when I've done book signings at Barnes & Noble and I say it's a graphic novel, they're like, it's got dirty pictures in it. Like, oh, it's what they call a comic when you put it in and we got a spine on it and all this other. It's a comic book. And then they go, okay. But they had such a great opportunity, I thought, where it's like, here's this thing you could tell outside the continuity type stories for an older audience, a bigger price tag perhaps too, and still keep the main line going, feeling relatively the same way. But then it felt like they went pedal to the metal with it, as comics are wont to. Like, Wolverine's a hot character, all of a sudden Wolverine's everywhere and everyone's kind of starting to behave like Wolverine. Harley Quinn's a hot character, Deadpool's a hot, all of a sudden they're everywhere and everyone behaves kind of like them too. And you lose that uniqueness. I know some people enjoyed the Snyder versions of the Superman and Batman movies or whatever, but I felt like, you have like this darker Superman. Now, like, how dark is Batman gonna get to feel like you still have that dynamic? Is he just ripping people's heads off, and so is he just constantly? Is he just like guttural and cursing all the time and just punching people out, and he's just blowing up at Alfred? Like, how dark and how mean is now Batman gonna get if Superman's kind of down in the dumps too? So I love that dynamic always of kind of Superman being this beacon of hope, and Batman not necessarily being dark, but being a little bit more realistic in his approach, with a slight side towards pessimism, towards being untrusting, because of the fact that he's experienced so much and seen so much, and it's kind of difficult, even though he does have tremendous hope in people. It's still kind of difficult for him to have blind faith in people. So that dynamic played off, I think, so well in the comics and in so many animated shows and everything. But when it came time to see that film, it just felt like, man, this is just, I don't know. It was tough to make it through. I couldn't make it through Man of Steel. That was bleak as hell to me. It was bleaker than any Batman film I ever watched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most inspiring moments to me, what was the Superman Christopher Reeve's movie where they had the three villains from the Phantom Zone come back? Was that 2 or 3?
2. Yeah.
Two.
With Zod.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Zod. When Superman is down and the three villains are there, and just the people on the street start to gather around to protect him. You know, that to me is really the greatest scene, because these are just ordinary people, and they have to know on some level that, you know, they don't have superpowers. There's nothing that they can really do here. They're putting their lives on the line, and they could just be killed instantly. But, you know, they're standing up for this hero that has stood up for them. And that to me is like, gets me right here.
Yeah, it's similar to the parallel film, which is Spider-Man 2. In that whole train scene, and it's the same scenario, and they're like, you know, you got to go through us to Doc Ock, and he's like, okay, and he does, you know, and it's like they know that he's gonna, but it's the fact that I mean, that's a moment of heroism, you know, and to portray that kind of a thing. And again, you're talking about, okay, here it is within a superhero film, but people go through all that kind of stuff every day in terms of, here's this person that needs my help, whatever it may be. And here's an obstacle from life coming at you, and you're like, well, you got to go through me first. You know, we all experience that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so, and that's just the metaphor for all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think actually King Cryptid and Abigail Moore are not anti-heroes. I think they're just heroes. Yeah,
I would agree. I would agree. And I thank you for saying so. But I agree. Yeah, your character in Tinseltown is absolutely a hero, and she's a relatable hero because of the fact of she's going up against adversity in her own life. She's obviously not an invincible character by any stretch. She's a normal human being, and she is finding that there are people in her life that she cares about that are in danger, that are maybe in over their heads in some way, and she tries to help however she can. And sometimes that really gets her caught in a pretty tough situation to get out of, and sometimes just a downright dangerous situation. Sure. And the same thing with King Cryptid, where I'm talking about how we all sort of feel like we have our own little corner of the world that we try to watch over and protect, and then sometimes something encroaches upon that, and you either let it run you over and destroy all the things and all the people you love, or you try to do something about it. So it's that level of where he's got this heroism in him. He's a little bit more, and we'll find out in the story. I've talked about it before, but he's got more of a redemption arc within him because of what was done to him. So there was a time period where he wasn't responsible for some of the awful things he did. It was part of a curse that was placed upon him. But when that curse was in a way partially lifted, he still realized all the bad things that he did, and he feels like there still must have been some way he could have stopped that curse from completely taking him over. And we'll find out more about that as we go on in the series, but he definitely has spent hundreds of years, and Lord knows how much longer, because he doesn't know if and when he's going to die or whatever. He's alive and kicking, and it's been that way for about 500 years. So he's just thinking, I guess I'm stuck here. You know, I got to make the best of it, and I got to make up for the bad I've done. And again, even though he wasn't necessarily choosing to do those bad things. But yeah, it's interesting to see how we're both kind of creating these heroes in a way that I know I can say that it's based on a lot of the stuff that's influenced me over the years, and a lot of the stuff I've loved, stories of heroism, whether it was in myth or various, not just comics or movies or anything like that, but various people that have existed. I mean, a lot of biographies, a lot of people I've known in life, a lot of different family members and things like that. For you, I know that Abigail Moore is essentially like this, hey, love you, Mom. Thank you for everything that you did. You want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, so my mom was a police officer for about 20 years in the Pittsburgh Police. And, it happened at a time when my parents had separated and ultimately divorced. Thank you, AL. Thank you for that, too. She needed a new career that she could do quickly so that, she could support me and take care of me. And she grew up loving reading Nancy Drew and that kind of thing. And so she tried out for the police academy, and she did it. She went out every night. And
not to interrupt you, but even look at that, right? I mean, your mother was inspired by a fictional hero.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. The whole thing kind of comes full circle in a way. Yeah, that's very true. And, she told me lots of stories about the adventures that she had. One of the things that they did with the cops back then before they put them on the streets is they would take them up, to a top floor of the police building, and they would say, okay, look at these people on the street. Now, assume that somebody is there that's got a gun and they are shooting innocent people. Do you have what it takes to shoot to kill them in retaliation? And my mom listened to this speech and she said, yeah, I think I could do that. If I had to, I could pull that trigger, and so she's definitely a big influence on Abigail Moore, but she's not the only one. There's a scene in Tinseltown Losing the Light where her boyfriend, Dan, proposes to her, and her immediate reaction is to say, yeah, I'm not stupid. I love you. And that's word for word what happened when I proposed to my wife. So I stole that. You got to be careful with writers because we'll steal anything from anybody.
That's great. Well, again, going full circle with it being your anniversary. So
that's right. Bring it back to the theme.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Let's see. AL's a fan of Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys and Bobbsey Twins. That's funny. Yeah. That's the thing is all these fictional works and depictions of heroism. It's inspiring, and you never know who you're going to inspire. And when we have a lack of that, or a lack of those kinds of depictions of what it means to be a hero, to make those tough choices at times, and it doesn't always have to be some epic grand scale of sacrifice or anything like that, but there are these smaller levels of sacrifice. Sure. And to kind of lose out on that, it's like I said, we certainly don't see enough of it, and I really don't think we see enough of it in stuff that's aimed at kids. Mm-hmm. Growing up, you're bombarded. I was bombarded with it in terms of comics and cartoons and movies. Of just every single thing was about not necessarily moral finger wagging, but depicting people in tough situations and doing something to help their friends, their loved ones, their family, their pet, their whatever it may be. You know what I mean? Like, they're getting sometimes into mischief, trying to help somebody else out. Yeah. And maybe sometimes even being blamed and not even really being seen. I mean, that's the classic tale of Spider-Man, is that he's just constantly demonized when he's trying to do the right thing.
Right. But
You
that's a
know,
part of Joseph Campbell's monomyth too, right? Is
yeah,
that the hero has to kind of die to the outside world, has to transform, has to become something else. And when they come back to the world, whatever they bring, whatever boon or message they have, is frequently misunderstood, is frequently rejected. So it makes sense that Spider-Man is seen as the villain because that's how the media is portraying him.
yeah, and it's much like in real life as well, where there's people who at times they will stand up, they'll do what's right. It's probably not the popular thing at the time, and they get first ignored and then ridiculed, and then eventually people accept it and go, yeah, we thought that the whole time, and then you pass away and they put a statue up for you.
Right.
It's like we've done that so many times as a society. You figure that we're just in a massive society with amnesia at this point, in terms of we constantly seem to forget people who come along and try to do these things and to speak out and to help and to pave a better path, and it often gets turned inside out, usually by the powers that be. And then eventually they turn you into a martyr and into some kind of a person to look at them, we should aspire to be them. It's like, that's really funny because 20 years ago people in your position, and maybe even you yourself, were ridiculing them and putting them through hell.
Yeah, right. Well, it's easy to stand for something when everybody around you is in complete agreement with you, right? It's
Yeah,
it's a whole other thing. I mean, there's that great speech that Captain America gives in the comic. I want to say it was written by Ed Brubaker, where he talks about, I will stand and I will stand alone, essentially, for what I believe in, even if the whole world, stands against me. And that's I mean, they kind of replicate that in the Marvel movie when it seems like Cap is the only one left standing, and all the other heroes have fallen, and he goes, all right, I can do this all day. And he's, I mean, that to me, again, he has no possible way of knowing that help is on the way or that he's doing anything other than going to his death at that point. But he's not willing to compromise or change his values based upon that.
yeah, yeah. And that's what also, again, it makes that, to do the flip side for a moment with the heroism and villainy part,
Yeah.
it makes that an equally compelling villain has to arise in order to face off against a hero of unwavering courage. So if you get these wishy-washy villains that every single time they're always just going to run away, or they're going to just kind of surrender or whatever, they're not really that compelling. So you do need these villains that also have an equal amount of fortitude to go in there and say, well, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this all day too.
Right.
One of us isn't getting out of this. And that's what makes these stories even more compelling. Eric says, appealing to the primal traits of humanity, a man providing for and protecting his family needs a comeback. That is the kind of stuff that is evergreen. Yeah, I mean, men, honestly, men and women. I'm tired of seeing both sides where I'm supposed to just buy into, like, oh yeah, no, they're great, they're strong and brave, and I'm like, and they're doing what? Mm-hmm. Show me something that they're doing. Show me something that, because you can't tell me that they're brave and courageous if they're not up against these kinds of things that make them afraid. And they're kind of putting that aside for a bit and saying, I'm going to bite the bullet here and I'm going for it. I'm standing. I'm not moving right now, like you just said. But we have a lot of characters nowadays where you're supposed to just buy into it. Mm-hmm. That, oh yeah, no, they're strong and they're brave and they're great. They're heroes. And
Mm-hmm.
and you can't really count on more than a hand, maybe even that. Goodness, sometimes I'm watching these things and I'm like, the hero of this story here, I don't think they did anything heroic. You're just sitting there going, all right, that was a selfish motive, and well, that was just, again, out of self-preservation, and then this one was just out of self-satisfaction, and then this one was just to kind of show off. It's like all these kinds of traits that is like, none of these are heroic though.
Yeah. No, I think, Joseph Campbell talks about like examples of heroism in real life, where somebody is falling off a cliff or something and somebody just risks their own life to try to save them, some total stranger they don't even know, and they've interviewed people that have done things like this. And they said, I didn't even really have time to think about it. It just seemed like something that I had to do. They weren't trying to be heroic. They weren't, thinking about the consequences. On some level, and on some kind of primal level, maybe it occurred to them that we're all in this together, and that, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try to save this person.
Yeah. I think that's honestly what a lot of heroes in stories and heroes in life, I think that's what a lot of their similarities are, is they have that thread where, I may not even like you really, but at the end of the day, we're all we got is each other, and it's that shared humanity and that shared experience where you put those, and let's face it, practically any difference for the most part that we have on a day-to-day basis as human beings is unbelievably petty. And when it comes to the bigger stuff, I'd say probably 99.9% of us can put that to the side and help each other out.
Sure.
And I know there's some people out there that go, oh, well, you're being a bit naive or whatever it may be. And the only reason I can say firmly that I believe that I'm not is because, seriously, if we were not that way, I think that we wouldn't really be around any longer.
Sure.
I think that and even though there's been times with humanity where there's been unbelievable, awful, war and horrible acts that some people have committed, there is not just an equal uprising of good, there is a tremendously overwhelming uprising of good. And even if, again, at the end of the day, there's still going to be some people out there who will take advantage of certain situations, a power grab, whatever it may be, that's going to happen. You can always count on, I believe anyway, firmly, that there's a certain line for a lot of people that once you start to cross that, they go, no more. That's it. And whoever's out there, whoever's in charge, whoever's whatever it may be, if they don't believe it, that there's going to be a pushback in a way that they could not have possibly ever predicted, they should be able to predict it, because there's enough events in history to say that, you don't really want to mess too much with people, because eventually they're all going to kick your ass. So, there's a line that people have, and they'll start to look out for each other, and then that's that. And then what you think you're doing with the witch hunt on them, they'll turn that right around on you. So, and again, so I take a lot of, I hate to use the word like faith in humanity, but there is a part of me that feels deep down, no matter, and there are days where I'm like, man, people are bastards, but much like everybody else. But again, when it's the greater evil that comes along, I do still strongly feel, yes, people look out for each other. They may not like each other, but there is a love for each other in some way, shape, or form. For somebody that is out there going through something, and you don't know who the hell they are, you don't know who they voted for, you don't know what they look like, you don't know anything about them. But you can hear about them maybe going through something tremendously awful, and your heart goes out to them, and maybe more so than that.
Absolutely.
And people have that capacity, and they show it every single second of every single day.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that, and, one of my favorite quotes about free speech, to paraphrase, is the one where they say, I may not agree with anything that you say, but I will fight to the death for you to have the right to say it. And I think that's the example of that, really, is that ultimately, because we're all human, because we're all alive, we have more in common with each other than we have differences, and everybody wants to be happy and everybody wants to be safe and to feel loved and to live in a world where, you can feel that way.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is again, I wish Blue Teddy was here, because she would enjoy some of the tinfoil hat Pete stuff. But I definitely, absolutely feel that there is some kind of constant, and this is throughout all of history. This is provable, that there is a constant need for those who have the power, that want to keep everybody else at each other's throats. Because if they're not at each other's throats, they're going to either kick out the people in power and go, what do we need you for? We're all fine. Or they're going to start going, hey, they're actually the ones that are making all of us miserable. Yeah. So it's all about that constant strategy of divide and conquer, even ideologically.
Sure.
So again, it really is. It's so true that there are so much more, there's so many more things that we have in common, as opposed to the differences that we have. And then even the differences that we have, I find that I've met some people in life that they thought that they were way more different than me. That there's no possible way we could be civil, let alone be friends. Sure. And, then eventually, and I'm talking specifically in this situation, you're at school with someone, you have to be around them all the time. You're working with somebody, whatever it may be. And then after a while, you start realizing, like, crap, like, we kind of have way more in common than I thought, And then all of a sudden, there's a respect level, and whatever differences that are still there, they're not insurmountable. Sure. and a dialogue can even be had with some of those differences. And you start realizing, we actually don't feel too differently about certain things. We're just approaching how we would tackle them from different angles.
Absolutely.
So I feel that way too about a lot of the issues that we have in the world. There's more people agree about certain things than they realize, but it's up to the powers that be to go, no, remember, you're all the way on this side, and then they're all the way on that. You're not supposed to like each other. Don't talk and work things out. So they keep all of us kind of at like a Cold War, as opposed to going, what, you guys actually should get along. You got a lot in common. You could probably work out the rest. I don't think I've ever seen a political leader, for the most part, ever do that. I've never really seen many of them go in there like, yeah, you know what? You could probably work out those differences.
Yeah, but where I do feel that in the air is when I go to a great comic convention.
Exactly.
I was just at Free Comic Book Day at Golden Apple, and I was talking to this guy he was an actor actually on Blade, and he's got a new comic coming out, and he told me he's from South Africa originally, and he just came back from a convention, I think in Cape Town, and he was talking about like how universal the superhero archetypes are, that you have, African children there that don't speak any English, but they know how to put on a Batman outfit and go to
they know a hero when they see
they
one.
know a hero.
Yeah.
And how inspiring that was for him.
Yeah, it's tremendous. Again, it's when people are left to their own devices, and where we toss the rhetoric aside, or whatever the latest thing to get pissed about during the day is that we're supposed to be angry about, and we're just left to, let's communicate, let's be here to just enjoy something we have a shared commonality in. It's just like world peace is broken out. It's incredible. All of a sudden, you're like, how do we even start to not like each other? Even I've seen at some conventions, you're supposed to, on the internet anyway, when you go on Twitter, if you don't like a certain kind of character or whatever, you're either on the right side or wrong side of history, or whatever the hell that even means for liking a fictional character. But then at conventions, I've seen people have almost the same exact conversations, and people are laughing about it, and they're just, they're ripping each other, and it's funny, and it's, and maybe some of the things they say seem like maybe to an outsider that they're getting heated or whatever it is, but they're giving as good as they get, and it's fun, and they're like, oh yeah, thanks. They pat each other on the back after the conversation, and they walk away, and it's great.
Well, you're Italian, right?
Yeah, half Italian,
So
half Chinese. Yeah.
okay. So I'm part Italian too. I'm actually even a little bit Chinese, but um,
Oh, no way! Wow.
yeah. And I don't know if this is your experience. My experience is when you have the big family reunions of Italian people. You think you are. Um, Everybody gets into big blowout, knockdown, drag out arguments about all the stuff you're not supposed to talk about, like sex and politics,
Everything
and
and anything.
religion. It's all on the table. And then at the end of the night, everybody hugs and kisses and goes to sleep. Nobody's really expecting to change anybody's minds.
Yep.
But that's just how they express themselves.
Exactly. He just described like every Christmas and holiday at my father's side of the family. Goodness, it's seriously to a T. It just like the room would shake with the vibrations of yelling. And I don't know what the hell they're saying half the time because I only understand very little Italian, especially as a kid. And I'm just like, I just see these people losing their damn mind. And then like when we leave, everyone's like, okay, bye, you know, giving everybody hugs and kisses and whatever. Oh man, yeah, it's so true. But yeah, that's again. I think when you remove, if there is somebody within the situation who is looking to achieve some kind of control or power, or that's how you maintain power is through control. If there's someone involved who's looking to do that, then there's going to be manipulation of the situation. Mm-hmm. But if someone is removed from that, so if you have someone who's the matriarch or the patriarch of the family, and they choose sides, and then all of a sudden it starts getting weird. But if they can kind of stay neutral and kind of just, you know, like my nonna would always just be there kind of rocking back and forth in her chair, just kind of knitting away. She wouldn't really say a word. You know, so it's like you could just let them fight kind of a thing. It becomes less heated and less vicious. But as soon as it's like, this is the approved side, you know, and the person who's the power figure within whatever relationship there is achieves that status of like, you're on the right side, you're on the wrong side. Then all of a sudden it gets ugly and weird and there's grudges and no one talks for years. And, you know, and it's like that again, like there's a microcosm for the whole world. So as soon as the power dynamic comes along and wants to stay or control power or whatever it may be, and have the favor of whatever side of the argument or people that they want, you have that manipulation of a situation that goes on. But if you just have them kind of stay out of it and let people be people, and just, you know, the only time you step into it is when there is a almost like if you're a good referee in a sports game and you're not again choosing sides, but you're calling a fair game, then that's different. But if you're actually going in there and you're manipulating the situation, you can't have certain things play out that way. But yeah, to me, it really goes back to every single thing because of the fact that you see that within these heroes and stories. So we're talking about all these different things that occur with certain power dynamics and things like that. That's another thing that I find is so indicative of a hero, is they have every opportunity to grab and seize power in some way, shape, or form, and at every opportunity they choose not to.
Right. Well, in some ways, the whole, especially in the superhero genre, what makes it, I think, unique is that obviously superheroes in some ways are a metaphor for the power of the United States, right? Superman, especially being the first superhero. And, you know, for a very long time, countries were ruled by the might equals right equation of, well, you've got land, we want it, so we're going to take it because we can, because we're more powerful than you, you know, that sort of thing. And the United States was this shining example of being the most powerful country in the world that was still going to try to behave in a moral way, right? Which I think in some ways is what Superman is a metaphor for. Now, I'm not saying that we've always got that right. We've always been a perfect country, But I think that the ideal of America is that it's not just might makes right. It's that you can have power and use it for good.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I think most people even talk about when they talk about how they love America. I think they love the idea, they love the ideal, but they're well aware that what has gone on under America's name, much like any other name of anything, whether it's God, country, whatever, is less than ideal. Is less than perfect. So, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, it's maybe helpful to look at the Arthurian tales, right? Because, like you were just saying, whenever you have a hierarchy of power, it becomes ripe for corruption. Whether it's in a family or religion or politics or anything. So you look at the Knights of the Round Table. As an ideal, they were completely pure. Right? I mean, that's what they were shooting for, to be the ultimate knights, to have power and to use it to help the common people. But of course, Camelot is doomed because humans are imperfect and corrupt, and Guinevere and Lancelot betray Arthur, and, the kingdom falls. Mordred's, attacks his own father.
We're prone to the 7 deadly sins. Yeah.
Right. And that is a compelling part of the human story. I mean, as much as Abigail Moore is a hero or a heroine in Losing the Light, she is exposed to the very worst, the very darkest side of humanity throughout the course of Losing the Light. And that's kind of what Losing the Light, it's kind of a double meaning, but that's part of what it's talking about, is how much can you be exposed to that kind of evil and not have it make some impact upon who you are as a human being.
Because that's a film term, isn't it? We're losing the light. Let's go.
The other thing is, we're losing the light, so we have to film quickly because otherwise it's not going to turn out.
Yeah, it's great. Now, that makes a good segue for talking about your campaign before we wrap up. So for those that wanted to check it out, Dave's got his campaign. It's on Kickstarter. There's the link right there in the chat for you guys. And he's super close to 5,000. Man, you're 19 away. Now, Kickstarter, I'm sure that they update, I think, live. I'm going to refresh it anyway, just in case.
Okay.
Okay, so it's at 4,981.
Yeah.
It would be great if we could hit 5,000 live on the show. So if you guys haven't had a chance to back it yet, now he has an $8,000 goal on this. Yeah. If you haven't had a chance to back it yet, ours says he backed it. Great.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Then go over now. No better time than now, and we can have that $5,000 milestone hit on the show. So, Dave, as far as this campaign goes, feel free to explain away.
Yeah, so this is going to be for the director's cut graphic novel edition of Tinseltown Losing the Light. So it's going to collect all 5 issues of the Alterna miniseries, plus 5 additional pages of new story content. It's going to have at least 3 new pinups, including one by Pete. It's going to have an introduction by comics legend Tony Isabella, creator of Black Lightning. And yeah, I think it's the best thing that I've done so far. I'm really proud of it, and Pete's designing the book, so it's going to look great. By the way, Pete, I just got the books that you sent me, so I added a new level. We have the single issues, and you'll see that I put in a big description where I say that there is a tear on the final page of issues 2 and 3 of the first Tinseltown miniseries. So, full disclosure, I knocked where it says version 3 there. I want to be very upfront about that because, we want to mail out everything in the best possible condition, and those are the best condition issues we have left of the first miniseries.
Yeah, that's correct. There was a printer error on about, I'd say, 300 to 400 copies.
Yeah.
it was a little brutal to go through it and say, oh my Lord, how the heck did that happen? They have no explanation either. This is a printer from a long time ago, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
Not currently the one we use right now. And Yeah, that's what had occurred with those copies, and unfortunately, that's all we have left now. But it's good that you mentioned that, and you let people know. Everything else about them looks great, but it's
Yeah, I
just
mean, you
that
would never
back
know.
page.
It's not. It doesn't actually affect the art of the book. It's on the literally the final page, which is like the letters column. But we knocked $5 off, so you're essentially getting those 2 issues for free anyhow.
There you go, and you can have all the complete issues there. I believe those are third printings. Is that correct?
Might be third printings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
Dr. Mask's Retro Elixir asks me if there's any chance of another Tinseltown story before it came out on a Wednesday. Maybe. That's something I've thought about. I don't know. I have to wait and see if Pinboy, which is included in the director's cut of Losing the Light, is kind of a transitional story between the first graphic novel and thank you, Ara. And the second one. So Pinboy will be included in the director's cut. Maybe if I did it, it would probably have something to do with Abby's wedding.
Well, if you've ever got one ready to go, feel free to send it my way. That'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the Pinboy short was great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was really happy with how that turned out. And the artist, by the way, Henry Ponciano, I can't say enough about him. I mean, we've been working together for about 10 years now. And Henry's just fantastic. And it's funny because originally this was just going to be 3 pages longer. And it's kind of like a balloon, right? When you start decompressing certain parts of the story, then you're like, oh, well, now that part feels rushed. Now we need to expand that by a few more pages. So that's how it ended up being 5 extra pages.
Oh, okay. Nice. Well, I mean, it's a director's cut, so
yeah,
or a creator's cut, I should say, even. But yeah, this is great. So you're $19 away. I hope we can hit it, but it looks like we might not. There's only a couple minutes. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot if they haven't backed it. It sounds like a couple people already have backed it that are here.
Oh yeah, at least a couple.
So you've got 21 days left. So you're absolutely going to hit your goal. You need $8,000. By the time you guys watch this tomorrow, a lot of people always watch these shows the next day. You guys probably will see that this is at 5,000. But even if you do, you should go back it if you wanted to back it. Don't let that hold you. It's not the $5,000 goal. It was just a $5,000 milestone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those that are watching this tomorrow, later on, whatever it may be, the description is going to have the link to the Kickstarter. And then also I want to, before we close out, I want to just give a super quick shout out to everybody that's backing the King Cryptid campaign. We just crossed 40,000 tonight.
Wow.
Thank you guys so much. This has been a massive undertaking for me to fulfill. The alternate campaigns are way more complex because there's so much more offered, but just the amount of shipping to individuals on this has been an undertaking, and I'm very grateful for that undertaking. Don't mistake my tone for anything other than that. It's absolutely moving to me. When I'm alone packing stuff, signing books, it hits me that like I'm signing books, and you know when you're signing books at a show, and it's sometimes rare to sign even 50 to 100 copies for people, meeting different people. But like I'm here. And I'm signing sometimes 400 to 500 copies. And I'm just like, goodness, if this was a room full of people and I was signing 400 to 500 copies and everybody that backed the campaign was essentially just like waiting in line, what an overwhelming feeling. And I try to put myself in that because that's truly what it is. It's just everybody spread out. And the way this works is obviously they're not all in a room with me and these things get shipped out. But I envision that's what's in front of me, and sometimes it's honestly overwhelming. It's such a tremendous feeling of gratitude that I have for you guys that have helped make this possible, and because this project means a hell of a lot to me. I plan on doing this for the rest of my life. As long as you guys want to read it, I'm going to keep making it. I seriously have over 100 issues to tell of this series, and every year we're going to be putting out 4 to 5. So this is just where it starts. This is King Cryptid number 1 to 4. It's in demand until June 1st. If you haven't had a chance to back it yet, go for it. It's right there on Indiegogo. You can go to kingcryptid.com as well. Again, the link is in the description of the show. But thank you guys so much for bringing me this far with this series, and I can't wait to get more of it done. And I'm very, very close to finishing Fulfillment. Less than 2 weeks away. So far, 1,083 out of 1,292 perks have shipped out. And I give all these updates on the campaign page just so you can see, is he done yet? Is he done yet? You can reference it every day. I update it every day. I ship about 100 or so a week, and so about less than 2 weeks left on Fulfillment for this. But thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you everybody that's backed Tinseltown. I appreciate your support, and for many of you, your continued support. And I got my copies of King Cryptid, and it's great. So if you haven't backed it yet, what are you waiting for?
Thank you so much, Dave. And I feel the same for you with Tinseltown. It's a great series. I'm honored to publish it here at Alterna. And for those that are wondering, why isn't it a giant? It's simply, it's too much story. we physically and literally cannot make it a giant. So instead I said, Dave, just make it a premium style graphic novel. Do it, under your own imprint. And that's what he's doing. So for those that are wondering, oh, did it leave Alterna? What's happening? No. Why isn't there nothing like that? At Alterna, since we don't make graphic novels anymore, we have giants and single issues. If it's over 100, now I think with this new printer, I think if it's over 115 or something like that, whatever the divisible of 16 is, 114 and whatever, I forget. But if it's over that point, we can't make it a giant. It literally, the staple won't go through and collapse it. Yeah, so yours is over that. That's for sure. Yeah. So it's better that it's bound this way in a nice format, and we're going to keep it the same sizing as the previous graphic novel that was made underneath Alterna's label, but instead it'll be underneath Dave's label of Abacab, but it'll look pretty much the same thing other than that logo in the corner.
Yep, absolutely.
But thank you guys so much again for joining us tonight. AL says, I want to say that David is a great creator. His book is one of the first books from Alterna that I bought. I hope to see more in the future. Good night.
You will. Thank you. Thank you so much, AL. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Going to need a bigger staple. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Dave, it was wonderful talking to you about this. We covered a broad range of topics of heroism and storytelling. If you guys have anything else to add, any questions or comments for me or David on the show, please leave them afterwards, and we'll do our best to get to them. Thank you guys so much, and everyone have a wonderful night.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining.